Okay, so it's like technically 30 minutes until Tome Topple officially ends in my time zone, but I kind of already stopped reading. So I don't have any makeup on, my hair's wet from a shower, I'm kind of tired, and I have a really stressful day tomorrow, so I'm just gonna do this like super quick and get it done and just be like, well, Tome Topple was mostly successful, because I mean it was. And I just reached for the books that I read, and I don't have either of them at hand, so I'll just talk about them. So final page count. I read 2 books completely, and then I read 70% of a third book. So I read A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. I read The Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman, and I got to about page 440 of my edition of American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Almost forgot his name. So altogether, for like Tome Topple, just the tomes, that would be 1,470 pages in the editions that I read. That is not all that I read during this time, though. I also read, so obviously I started off finishing Vasa and the Night on the first day of Tome Topple. I read a short story that I got off NetGalley called Witch and Prince, which I'll mention in my wrap-up. And then, oh my gosh. I had such high hopes for American Gods and was so radically let down by it. Now, Gaiman fans... Okay, let me backtrack. Let me talk about like each book and what I thought of it. So, Darker Shade of Magic, I really did like it. However, I really didn't care for the way Lila went about getting entered into the competition. It was so shitty what she did to the other competitor. I mean, yeah, obviously it could have been worse, but it was so terrible, and not for good reasons. Like, it wasn't a life or death reason. She's such a selfish person, but not in a selfish to keep herself alive sort of way. She's kind of just selfish for the fun of being selfish and terrible. I don't know. Lila kind of rubs me the wrong way sometimes. And she did in the first book too. I kind of, like, some of the things she does, like the way she takes care of herself, I do appreciate. Like the way she handles people who try to take advantage of her or whatever. She doesn't let anyone run her over. And I really like that part of her character. But then sometimes she's sort of capriciously vicious in ways that, I don't know, it just doesn't work. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I really didn't like that decision on her part. I thought it was like weirdly unnecessary too. Like, it's not what I would have wanted the character to do, I guess. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. And then something else happened at the very end of the book, which I can't really talk about because it's the second book in a series and it's the end and it's like a spoiler. But then Kel made a decision, an action. He did something at the end of the second book that just felt so grossly out of character. It rang so false. And this isn't like, oh, I just didn't like it, or it's not the choice out. No, it like, for all the stuff we know about his character and how he thinks and how he makes decisions, this decision rang so false on a character level that it really ruined the end of the book for me. It was kind of like hovering around a 5-star read for me, despite the Lila stuff. Like, I could just be like, whatever, it's not my character. I kind of be like, But then this one thing happened, and it's just like, so I don't know. Originally I was going to do a review of the first 2 books because I read the second book for the Book 2 Best of F Awards. It's been nominated. But, Conjuring of Light just came out, 2.5 months ago? And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to read that and do a full trilogy review as soon as I can get my hands on it, which might take a while. I'm like 7th on the wait list at my library. So we'll see. Maybe in a couple more months. Man, I really hope I get it before June because I really wanted to have all the reviews done before the voting. But like I said, we'll see. Okay, so that's my thoughts on the book. I still gave it like a 4.5 stars. Second book, The Amber Spyglass. Obviously, it's the third book in his Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman. I read all 3 books this month, actually. Now that I think about it, I started, The Golden Compass was the first book I read this month, and I finished the trilogy. Did not care for it as much as the first 2 books. So going in order, I probably shouldn't get too much into this because I'll talk about it more in my wrap-up, but I would say The Subtle Knife was my favorite book, then The Golden Compass, then The Ember Spyglass. Next thing I picked up was American Gods. Now, this was not on my TBR because I did not know I was going to get this book. I've had this book on request from my library for 6 or 7 weeks. It came in a couple days into Tome Topple, so I was like, oh, well, I guess I have to read this now because I checked it. It auto-checked out. It's a digital copy, and if I don't get it read, I'll lose it, and I'm not waiting 6 more weeks to get this book back. And I was really excited because the television show is coming out, and everyone loves this book. Like, this book is kind of turning into a classic, future classic, right? Everyone loves Neil Gaiman. Like, everyone, it seems like. So I do like Good Omens. So I was thinking, yeah, I'll probably like American Gods. I don't really like American Gods at all. It's not the worst thing I've ever read, obviously, but it's not going to get more than a 3-star from me. I'm about 190 pages away from the end. I'm reading a special anniversary edition. It's called like the author's preferred cut or something. I find the protagonist so boring. And I just hit the section where his dead wife tells him that she isn't sure that he's ever been alive, that he's really living. She says, sometimes I used to walk into a room or turn off a light and forget that you were in that room. And that's how I feel about this character, because he's so boring. He can obviously write, but I hate all of his characters. Obviously, I'm not done. And it's sort of, I kind of want to say it's sort of picking up, but it's not really. I think they're just having like more sections with, the one thing I do love is he has these little, at the ends of some chapters, he has like Coming to America, which tracks the way that different gods were brought to the States. Those sections are actually really interesting. And so I think the reason it's felt like it's picking up is there have been like more of those as we hit the middle of the book. But otherwise, it's really not picking up. It's so masculine. The whole thing is just so straight, cishet masculine. It's just like, it's not my cup of tea at all. It's a bunch of old men trying to fuck virgins and a really boring main character. At least I don't hate the main character. It could be worse. He could be a real dog like Wednesday and I could hate him. So it could be worse, but I don't care about him. And then all of his female characters are so one-dimensional. They're so archetypal. You've got, so in fairy tales, one central element of fairy tales myths is that you have 3 types of women, and that's it. You have a crone, the whore, and the virgin. And they are one-dimensional. They just represent those, those archetypes. They do certain things, like the crone and the whore usually get punished. The virgin is deflowered and married off at the end, right? And that's what all the female characters are in American Gods. Like, it doesn't matter if they're gods. It doesn't matter if they're humans. They are all flat tissue paper characters who fit into one of those categories. Sam, obviously I haven't hit the end, so maybe he adds depth to her character, but there's only 190 pages left, and I can't imagine that in 440 pages we're going to get more than we already have. You know what I'm saying? Sam is the closest thing to almost having character development. She started off very much in the naive virgin category. She started to have a little personality when she runs into Shadow at Lakeside. We even get a very, very oblique hint that she's a lesbian, and then she kisses him. Now, it's not because she's sexually attracted to him, but also it doesn't serve any other purpose. Hate the characters. Hate all of the characters. Hate them all. I really hate Wednesday. And like I said, I'm 440 pages into it. I only have 190 pages left. I don't see it redeeming itself. Like, it might redeem itself enough so that I don't hate the ending, but at the same time, this is over 600 pages of boring, phallocentric blandness. For all the Neil Gaiman fans out there who don't like Good Omens, I can see why, because that book is way more Terry Pratchett than Neil Gaiman. Now, Neil Gaiman fans, tell me if American Gods is really not a good example of his writing, and I will pick up another one of his books. But if this is real typical of how he writes characters, how he develops characters, then it's not happening again. That was really long. That was a really long ramble about a book. So I have not finished American Gods. I could have finished American Gods. So I've been reading it for about 7 or 10 days, but let me tell you why I haven't read it. I definitely could have finished it before the end of Tome Topple. Hell, I had like 6 hours today where I could have read it and finished it, even though I'm not reading it very quickly. But I was not liking it. And I had another book on my shelf that was not a tome. It was actually quite short, and that is Captive Prince. And so I was really struggling with American Gods. I took a break to read Saga Volume 6, which I'll have a review for soon. I took a break, read that, read a little bit more American Gods, still was not driving with it. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna read like the first chapter of Captive Prince and see how I get on with it. 24 hours later, this book was done because I freaking loved it. It was such a good setup novel. Next day, I immediately went out and picked up Prince's Gambit and King's Rising. But before I let myself read this, I made myself read 2 more chapters of American Gods. Then I read this in about a day, a little over a day. Then I read another chapter and a half of American Gods. And so today, instead of finishing American Gods, I've been reading King's Rising. I'm like 65% into it. Definitely gonna finish it before I go back to American Gods. Basically, I'm just gonna finish that book like a chapter a day until it's done. I am gonna push through it because I want to do a whole actual like analytical review, maybe with some like examples of stuff that irks me, why it irks me. So I didn't read another tome, but I did read almost this much more. That just wasn't a tome. It was a good Tome Topple for the most part. I just really, really ran aground on American Gods. And I'm sure like people are going to be upset that I don't like that book, and here I am reading Captive Prince, which is extremely divisive. Like, people seem to really hate that book. That trilogy, excuse me. But whatever. Unapologetic. I will probably do a whole review of Captive Prince when I'm done with the trilogy. There is a really adorable podcast interview C.S. Pacat did with the Hopeless Romantic podcast that I will, be linking to. That's actually, I listened to that podcast and I was like, oh, I have to pick up her books. And I'm glad I did. Because I feel like those books get kind of misrepresented. Like, I was not going to pick them up because of some of the rhetoric I've heard surrounding them. Like, really, really not happy rhetoric. But I'm really glad I did because I really feel like they've been misrepresented in so many ways because they are not what I expected. That was my Tome Topple. Not quite 1,500 pages. Ugh, I really wanted to do 1,500 pages. If you participate in Tome Topple, let me know how it went. I guess you can let me know what you think of American Gods. Like, if I've totally insulted your honor by not liking it. Though, be forewarned, there will be like a real review of that coming. So maybe hold on to it until that video. And yeah, I'll see you guys. Bye.